Giannis is a beast, a living legend, a symbol of everything it means to rise from the bottom. But his last name doesn't travel alone. It comes with an echo, because it's not just Antetokounmpo, it's the Antetokounmpos, Thanasis, Kostas, Alex, three names that to many sound like an inside joke of the NBA. Privileged players who are only there because of their bloodline. And yes, the last name opened doors for them. Being the brother of the league's most beloved MVP doesn't go unnoticed, but when you take the time to look beyond the memes, what you find isn't a story of failures, but something more uncomfortable. What if the problem isn't how bad they were, but how blind the system is? This isn't about defending anyone, it's about looking with context, about understanding how this machine that builds idols also discards anything that doesn't shine the same. Because maybe being Giannis's brother was as much a privilege as it was a curse. Thanasis Antetokounmpo is, for many, the symbol of everything that's wrong with nepotism in the NBA. The easy joke, the Bucks bench mascot, the guy who warmed the seat more than the engine. But the meme is misleading, because if you take off the cynicism glasses for a moment, another story appears. One that starts long before Giannis became a superstar. In Greece, in a neighborhood club, where the two brothers played together and shone as European basketball prospects. Thanasis was drafted by the Knicks in 2014, before Giannis won his first MVP, before the ring, before becoming the Greek Freak. That already changes the narrative. He wasn't a league handout, he was a real prospect, long explosive with that fire in his body that you can't teach. He didn't break into the rotation in New York, but he shined in the G League, twice on the all-defensive team, nearly 14 points per game, steals, blocks, rebounds. And when he crossed the pond to play in Europe, he became a star. He played in Andorra, broke states, and ended up signing with Panathinaikos, the biggest club in Greece. All-star MVP, league titles, cup, national team call-ups. He even played a Eurobasket alongside legends like Kalathis, Sloukas, the Gasol brothers. When Milwaukee signed him in 2019, yes, of course, the last name mattered. No one denies that. But the guy came with a resume, with experience, and with real chemistry with his brother. The thing is, in the NBA, there's no room for the in-between. Either you're a star or you're invisible, and Thanasis was never a star, he was something else. Pure energy, locker room guy, the one who jumps the highest on the bench, the one who throws his body, the one who yells when no one else wants to, and still, he had his night, because in 2021, in a random game against the Cavs, he really got to play. Not 30 meaningless seconds, it was him, being him, and he scored 27 points, blocks, dunks, intense defense. For a moment, he looked like Giannis, and it wasn't a mirage. It was the summary of everything he had inside, bottled up for years. He played nearly 200 games with the Bucks, few minutes, low stats, yes, but he was also there when the team won the championship, the first in 50 years. He was in the locker room, at practices, on the trips, in the culture, and that's also part of a championship team. Today, at 32 years old, and with an Achilles injury that sidelined him, his NBA career seems paused, or maybe over. But there's something no one can take away from him. Thanasis made it, he played, he won, with all the doubts and all the criticism on his back, and even though they used him as a scapegoat, he responded like a professional. One who understood that his role wasn't to score 20 points per game, but to keep the spark alive in a championship locker room. And that, even if it doesn't show up in the highlights, is worth more than most people are willing to admit. The curious thing about the Antetokounmpo last name is that sometimes it's more of a burden than a boost. Because even when you win, it seems like it's not enough. Before Giannis lifted the Larry O'Brien trophy, another Antetokounmpo already had a ring in his trophy case. But no one remembers, no one mentions it, and not because it didn't happen, but because it was Kostas. Raised in the United States, Kostas had a different upbringing: high school in Wisconsin, local star, state champion, college offers. He chose Dayton. He wasn't a statistical phenomenon, but his body, his bounce, his potential made him an interesting prospect. A similar mold to Giannis, but without the ravenous hunger or the epic narrative of the streets of Athens. He was picked last in the 2018 draft. Literally, last pick, a symbol, almost a cosmic joke. The MVP's brother coming in through the back door. He was sent to Dallas, where he played only 2 games, 11 minutes, 0 points, nothing. But in the G League, he made a better impression: 10 points, 6 rebounds, good percentages, enough to show he could play until Luka Doncic everything. The Mavs jumped on the win now train and development was put on hold. Kostas had no place. They waived him. And then came the twist that fueled every theory. The Lakers signed him. Right when rumors started flying that they wanted to lure Giannis, the conspiracy theories exploded. Was it a strategic move? An emotional bait? Kostas played next to nothing. Garbage minutes. Minimal stats. But on paper, he was there. in the bubble, on the championship roster, in the ceremony, in the ring. And when Giannis signed his extension with Milwaukee, Kostas vanished from the NBA map. He never played another game in the league. But far from hanging up his sneakers and living off symbolic legacy, he reinvented himself. He returned to Europe, plays in the EuroLeague, the highest level of FIBA, went through France, Turkey, and ended up in Panathinaikos, the same club that had revitalized Thanasis' career years before. There, he did find his place. Got real minutes, made an impact on defense, was part of a team that won the EuroLeague, and with that, he joined an elite club, the few players who have both an NBA and a EuroLeague ring, something even Giannis hasn't achieved. Today he's 26, and without making noise, has a respectable career. Won titles on 2 continents, played with the best, endured being the brother of the phenomena, without letting that define him completely. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: if his last name were different, we'd probably see him differently. As a role player who delivered in Europe, who had his shot in the NBA, and who left his mark on championship teams. But being an Antetokounmpo means everything is measured against the summit. And when you're compared to a volcano in eruption, even your own fire can seem lukewarm. Unlike his older brothers, Alex Antetokounmpo grew up with everything handed to him and with everything against him at the same time. He was born in Greece, yes, but by age 9, he was already living in Wisconsin. His childhood took place in gyms with regulation hoops, schools with good infrastructure, coaches with training. But more than anything, he grew up with an impossible mirror in front of his face. Because while he was learning to shoot off the glass, Giannis was becoming a legend. MVP, global star, $1 million contracts, documentaries, national hero, and all of that. While Alex was barely entering adolescence, from a very young age, Alex was the younger brother of the best. Every video of him training went viral, every move was dissected, every quote from Giannis about him, "He's the best shooter in the family," he said, added more pressure. And Alex responded, not with words, but with work. In high school, he kept improving, started by averaging 2 points per game and ended with 20. State champion, D1 offers. He had the chance to go to Ohio, DePaul, Green Bay, but he did something unexpected. He turned down the college route and went straight to Europe. A brave, risky, almost revolutionary decision, a la LaMelo Ball, a la Brandon Jennings. He wanted to toughen up with professionals, play against grown men, skip the college basketball bubble. He signed with UCAM Murcia in the ACB League, the second best league in the world after the NBA. He didn't last long on the first team, but in the reserves, he had a beastly debut. 28 points, 6 rebounds, threes, aggression. He had tools. What he didn't have was time. He entered the 2021 draft, but went unselected. Neither first nor second round, nothing. The last name no longer seduced. He was the 4th brother, the other one. And many teams were starting to realize that Giannis wasn't a mold, but an anomaly. Toronto signed him to the G League. He played little, averaged 2.6 points in 7 minutes per game. No shine, no impact. The following season, Milwaukee added him to the team, and that's when a historic page was written. For the first time, 3 brothers played for the same franchise. But it was symbolic, not real. Alex never debuted in the NBA. He went down to the G League affiliate, played more, averaged 5.8 points and 3 rebounds. Got minutes but never truly broke out, and what looked like an upward curve stagnated. After 3 years in the G League, he realized it wasn't the moment. He left, played a stint in Lithuania, another in Montenegro. Few games, few minutes, and now he's back in Greece playing for PAOK, a historic club, but far from the spotlight of Panathinaikos or Olympiakos. He's 23 years old, he has plenty of time and talent too, but what surrounds him is something else. The noise. The constant comparison, the weight of not having become what was expected. Because when Giannis says, "You're the best shooter out of all of us," expectation turns into a sentence. Every missed layup is a headline, every weak game, a disappointment, but there's something still floating in the air, something we can't fully discard. Alex is young, he has the body, he has the training, he has a story that's still being written, and above all, he has something his brothers never had, the chance to fail in silence. Far from the NBA, far from the cameras, where basketball goes back to being just that, basketball. Maybe there, in the muted noise of a European league, he can find what the noise of the last name denied him. Because if there's one thing the 3 of them share beyond the DNA and the training highlight reels, it's the burden of carrying a name that doesn't forgive. Being an Antetokounmpo is a blessing until it becomes a trap. And when your older brother is one of the greatest players in history, everything you do is measured against that absurd standard. It doesn't matter if you win a championship, if you score 20 points, if you grind in the EuroLeague or train like a beast, there will always be someone who says, yeah, but he's not Giannis. Thanasis, Kostas, and Alex aren't just competing on the court, they're competing against a narrative, against a last name turned superhero, against an image so big that even their real achievements seem like lesser versions. And that's where it becomes unfair, because if any of them had a different last name, their careers would be seen in a whole other light. Kostas would be the young role player who won an NBA and a EuroLeague title. Thanasis, the veteran who made history with Greece and contributed to the Bucks' biggest championship. Alex, the young prospect with experience in Europe and an open future. But no, they are Giannis's brothers. And that puts them in a separate category, a cruel category where everything is yes, but the NBA doesn't help. It's an ecosystem that idolizes stars and discards anything that doesn't shine. And when a repeated last name appears, the expectation skyrockets and the patience vanishes. If you're not the new Giannis in 6 games, you become a system glitch. The problem isn't that the Antetokounmpo brothers are bad, the problem is that the context demands they be something they never promised to be. And that constant pressure, that merciless magnifying glass breaks even the most prepared, because at some point you realize they're not playing against other players, they're playing against a shadow, and that at the highest level weighs more than any defender. When a player leaves the NBA to go to Europe, many see it as a step backward, but in the case of the Antetokounmpos, it was more of a return home. And more importantly, a return to their true dimension as players. Thanasis went back to Greece with the label of a discard and ended up being All-Star MVP, League Champion, a Panathinaikos star, and a key figure on the national team. In a country that had seen him born as a prospect, he became a reality. Kostas followed that same path. After an unremarkable NBA stint, he landed at Panathinaikos during a rebuilding phase. Not only did he play, he was a key part of a team that won the EuroLeague with minutes in big games and a crucial defensive role. Alex, although he hasn't broken out yet, also chose to return to Greece. He signed with PAOK, far from the spotlight, but closer to the space he needs to grow without the constant shadow of the last name. The EuroLeague is no consolation prize, it's a tactical and physical hell. The best non-NBA teams are there, there's no room for names, only for performance. And in that environment, Thanasis and Kostas shine, not as stars, but as key pieces. Maybe they were never the problem, maybe the mistake was forcing them to fit into someone else's mold, in a league that idolizes unicorns but discards everything that doesn't fit the showcase. And maybe Europe, with its rawness and more direct logic, wasn't their plan B, but the place where they finally stopped being Giannis's brother. The problem was never talent, the problem was the point of comparison. Because if your brother is one of the 10 most dominant players to ever step on a court, anything you do afterward is going to seem small. That's where the poison is, because Thanasis isn't criticized for what he does, but for what he's not. Kostas is pointed at for what he didn't become, Alex is judged for what hasn't exploded yet, everything is analyzed negatively, everything is measured by absence. But if you turn off the noise for a while and look at the facts, everything changes. Between the 3 of them, they have more than 300 professional games, titles in 2 continents, time in top leagues, national teams, championships, and moments of real impact. One was MVP in his country, another won an NBA ring, and then a EuroLeague. The youngest has already played in 5 different countries before turning 24. The concept of failure is completely distorted, because making it to the NBA, even for a contract, puts you in the top 0.001% of the best on the planet. Playing in the EuroLeague is competing at the highest level outside the United States. Being part of a national team with real responsibility is not for just anyone. But on social media, they're a joke, a meme, a dynasty of nepotism, because it's easier to mock a famous last name than to analyze the story with context. It's more comfortable to laugh than to understand, and yet these guys did what millions dreamed of and never achieved. They did it with pressure, with cameras on them, with a giant shadow blocking the sun, and even so they stayed fighting, winning, putting up with public scrutiny. The word bad not only doesn't fit, it's unfair, because what's really happening isn't a lack of talent, it's a lack of patience, of understanding of nuance, and that in a league that creates gods and discards humans happens more often than we think. For years, Thanasis, Kostas, and Alex were defined by what they weren't. They lived behind someone else's mirror, judged for not reflecting their older brother's shine. But if you step outside the narrative and look without prejudice, you see something else. 3 professional players, champions, national team members, guys who found their path far from the perfect script. Yes, the last name opened doors, but it also came with a pressure they never asked for. Every mistake was amplified, every success was downplayed, because when the point of comparison is Giannis, everything seems small. And still, they kept going. In Europe, in the NBA, from the bench, in the locker room, in EuroLeague finals. Without epic storylines, but with real presence, the NBA sells you heroes. But most careers aren't movies. They're imperfect paths, humanly real. So the next time you hear a joke about the other Antetokounmpos, pause for a second, because maybe they were never just the brothers of, maybe they were always just themselves. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. This was Hoop Secrets, and I'll see you next time.